Welcome to Queen of the Yard, hosted by the two dopest ACs on the planet. I'm Tracy Lauren, a former high school homecoming queen.
And I'm Stacey L. Holman, a former Miss Dillard University.
You just had to show me up.
Well, Tracy, your high school crown is cute, but this podcast is all about the HBCU campus queens, the drama, the magic, and the mission to reign the yard by any means necessary.
Well, all right then. Let's get into it. Welcome to another episode of Queen of the Yard. I'm Tracy Lauren, and this is my partner in real crimes, Stacey L. Holman.
Hello, my beautiful people. We have a great episode in store for you today. We'll be heading to the Commonwealth of Virginia.
But before we get into it, be a cutie and follow, like, subscribe to our channels on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram at Queen of the Yard TV, on Facebook at Queen of the Yard, and on Black Twitter at _Queen of the Yard. Also, hit us up on our crowdfunding page, crowdfunder.com/Queen of the Yard. Help us bring this beautiful, beautiful vision to the silver screen, y'all. We are super excited to introduce today's guest. She is a doctor of physical therapy, a beauty queen, a survivor, and a challenger. The multi-hyphen Dr. Desirée Williams. Now, in her past life, Dr. Desi was a college professor at Hampton University, the other HU. In late 2014, Desi co-authored and published a book entitled A Love Affair with My Hair, Why Black Women Cheat on Health. Ooh, I like that. Desi served as Miss Virginia USA 2016, finishing as a top 10 finalist in the 2016 Miss USA competition. She was Miss Virginia 2013, competing in the 2014 Miss America pageant, National Sweetheart 2012, and of course, Miss Hampton University 2011. She was also a castaway on season 35 of Survivor, a finalist on the Challenge USA season 1, and the winner of the Challenge USA season 2. Desi is now booed up in Los Angeles with her husband and owns the A+ Care, a home health agency and mobile physical therapy and occupational therapy business. Hey, Dr. Desi, you are a boss.
Hello.
Boss.
Or I'm just easily get bored easily. It depends on which way you look at it.
You know what? I can relate.
Well, I think we should start with a toast because this is amazing. Here to a queen.
Yes, here
Thank
to
you,
a queen.
Wait, why do you have like glass, Tracy? You're all fancy. I got a
because I'm fancy.
Desiree's got
She's
coffee.
got her crystal. Yeah.
I'm fancy. Thank you very much.
Her crystal.
Thank you very much. Listen, which is probably from like the 60s. My grandmother has everything and it's all in like pristine shape. So yes, these are my fancy vintage glasses. Beautiful. I graced you guys with fanciness.
Thank you. Well, before we jump into the interview, we just always want to just drop some history and some fun facts. And we are going to recognize today Miss Mary Peak. In September 1861, this free Black woman educated children, adults, free and enslaved. And she conducted her first class under the emancipation tree. And unfortunately, her life was cut short. She taught for like a year and some change to tuberculosis. But her memory and her history still remains because the tree is still there at Hampton. It's a gorgeous tree. I actually saw it. It's nicely sectioned off. And they also have a sculpture for her that sits on the yard. I guess you call the yard too, right? At Hampton that overlooks the beautiful harbor, the yard, the space.
We call it the waterfront.
The waterfront. Oh,
I believe her statue's along the waterfront.
So you
guys, that's very fancy.
Exactly.
The waterfront.
Yeah. We have like a kind of mini yard, but it's not.
You got water. So why call it yard when you got a waterfront?
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Desirée. We're so excited to speak with you. And let's just start from, where are you from originally? Where do you call, well, we know we call home as an adult, but as a kid, what were you calling home?
So I was actually born in Alabama, in Birmingham. Both of my parents are from Alabama, but when I was about 5 years old, we moved to Georgia. So I would say my home is Peachtree City, Georgia, which is like a little suburb outside of Atlanta. That's where I grew up until I moved to Virginia to go to college.
And why Hampton? I mean, you had Spelman, you had Clark Atlanta, you had some heavies. So why do you want to go to, I will say, the first HU, because I know the other HU y'all duke it out, but
yeah, we won't start that conversation here. Hampton was sort of, I think, I have to call it fate, honestly. Hampton is the only HBCU I applied to. I didn't really think I wanted to go to HBCU. So I applied to Hampton, I applied to University of Georgia, University of Alabama, and Auburn. Those are the only schools I applied to. And truthfully, my number one choice was University of Georgia, but they didn't offer me any scholarship money. And I don't know, that's maybe a stupid, I guess in retrospect, it's not a stupid reason because I have friends who are still paying off student loans. So Hampton offered me an amazing scholarship. My very, very best friend growing up, her older sister had gone to Hampton. So she was a senior at Hampton when I was a senior in high school. And I sort of, talked to her on the phone and she loved Hampton. And that was kind of all it took for me was a great scholarship opportunity. And then sort of my closest childhood friend, really like family to me, her older sister kind of giving the thumbs up. I knew we came from similar backgrounds. So I felt like she wouldn't, even though she, is an older sister still, and made fun of us and tortured us, I knew she wouldn't steer me wrong. So that's sort of how I ended up there.
You went after that bag. I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad.
Yeah, girl. I didn't have any student loans, so.
And that's great to hear that HBCUs actually give scholarships that are comparable or competitive to PWIs. And for those who do not know what PWIs are, Tracy, you can tell us because you went to a PWI.
Excuse you. I went to a good one though. Thank you. A predominantly white institution. Yes, that's what a PWI is. So we just schooled the people out there.
Exactly. So when we say that, you guys know what we're talking about.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. So then you got kind of dropped into the HBCU culture. So what was that like? Like just going first day of school, really, just kind of diving in.
That is a blast from the past, because it wasn't that super recent. I mean, I'm several years removed from my first day of college, but I kind of felt at home immediately at Hampton. Hampton is kind of an interesting place, and sometimes it gets a bad reputation, but a lot of the students who end up at Hampton come from predominantly white backgrounds. So we've gone to these like predominantly white elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and we maybe go to Jack and Jill, and that's where we get, to be around other Black people. So I think I felt comfortable at Hampton because so many people were like me, like, we came here to get a Black experience, but we're not used to a Black experience. But it never felt like the kind of environment. I guess I feel like I've been in a lot of environments where I felt like I had to act overly Black or I had to like shy away from parts of myself, but I never felt that at Hampton. I felt like Hampton was very much embracing of all parts of your personality, of your background, of your experiences. And I also stayed in a very small freshman dorm, and I think that helped. So I never felt out of place at Hampton. It was kind of boring at first because Hampton does have, or at the time had more rules than most colleges had in your freshman year. But in terms of like feeling accepted, feeling like I was in the right place, I always felt like I was in the right place.
All right, so I have a question about.
It sounds like you. Oh, go ahead. No, I was going to say it sounds like that Desi and Stacey both had a little bit of bougie Blackness going on there.
It's called Black excellence.
Yeah,
Black excellence.
Exactly. And yeah, I've been called bougie more than once in my life, and that's how I identify that.
Claim it. I receive it. I own it. Own it. We own it.
From the lady drinking out of a crystal glass in the morning, but
Exactly.
I learned how to be
Desirée
bougie.
And I know humility. We are humble. Right. We are very humble. We're for the people. We drink out of plastic and
and ratty old coffee cups.
So funny fact about HBCUs, because I went to Dillard University and those rules. So for us, it was not fair. Like for freshmen, if you lived on girls, that is, we had curfews. Mm-hmm. Guys did not have curfews.
And wait, really?
Yeah, the guys did not have curfews. I was like, why is that? But yeah, the girls, we had curfews. Crazy. So
everybody had curfews at Hampton.
See, that's equal opportunist. I think that was fair.
Yeah. At least that part was fair. Yeah, there were other things where it's like, okay, but everybody had a
Guys
curfew.
didn't have curfew, Stacy?
No.
What kind of
Maybe because they shared the same dorm as the upperclassmen students got, but still wasn't fair.
Yeah, that
And we
doesn't
had,
make
yeah,
sense.
it was no joke too. We had Ma Belle at the front door, and whatever you think Ma Belle looks like, you're probably right.
Do they still have, is it still that way where there's curfew for male students or female students, not for male?
I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know. That's a good thing. I need to find out. But
I just can't imagine this generation being okay with that.
I doubt it. I doubt it
a
is.
protest.
Well, they now have a dorm where I think the boys are on the bottom, the girls are on the top or something like that. Like there's kind of like a little, but they're not sharing rooms. So I don't know, but I probably not. Cause yeah, that went out with, yeah. So
yeah.
But anyway, but we're all here talking about getting to your first reign. Let me ask you, were there any pageants before? Well, let's talk about just Miss Hampton. When did you start learning about the Hampton competition? And I think there's a little story you have about your grandmother.
Yeah, so that was the Miss Hampton experience sort of started before I was even a student at Hampton, before I even thought I was going to Hampton, because I've already shared with you that was not my number one choice. So when I visited Hampton as a senior, I went with my mom and my grandmother, and it happened to be the same weekend as the Miss Hampton competition. So at Hampton, it's an actual pageant. It's not like a student vote. It's like a Miss America style beauty pageant. So we were sitting in the audience, and I had watched it on TV, but I'd never competed. I lived in an environment, in a predominantly white high school where I didn't view myself as like beauty, as a standard of beauty. So it never really even crossed my mind. But after the end of the pageant, I looked at my grandmother and I said, "Grandma, if I come to Hampton, I'm going to be Miss Hampton University." And my grandmother, I'm sure, was like, "Oh, honey, that sounds great." So I sort of forgot about that whole thing and was living my college experience. But my junior year, I went home for Thanksgiving. My grandmother used to always host a big Thanksgiving dinner. So I went home for Thanksgiving, and as we're like serving our plates at Thanksgiving, she comes over and she says, "Honey, aren't you supposed to be doing a pageant next year?" I was like, doggone it. How does she remember that? And at this point, the pageant is like a thing of the past. Like I said that 4 years ago, girl, we done moved on. But I had said it. I'd put it out into the universe. I told my grandmother that. And so I sort of followed through just because it was a promise I'd made to my grandmother, and it's a promise she had remembered. So apparently it had impacted her. And so that next year I competed in the Miss Hampton pageant.
Was there anything that you had to do before that to actually enter the Miss Hampton pageant? Is there like a pre-pageant or something like that takes place?
I mean, there's an interest meeting. And because it is a Miss America style competition, there's interview, there's talent portion of the competition. So I'd say the biggest thing that I spent my time prepping for was the talent portion of the competition, because I did not just have a talent on hand to perform.
Oh, so what did
when
you
did
do?
Okay. So, well, when did it start? Kind of walk us through before we get to the actual, does it start for the end of your junior year, or we're kind of going into your senior year, into the fall?
Yeah, so end of junior year is typically when they have I think the structure sort of changed now, but when I was competing, the interest meeting was usually spring. You didn't have to be a senior, but spring of your junior year. So towards the end of your junior year, there's an interest meeting. If you want to compete in Miss Hampton, you attend this meeting, so that over the summer you can start, working on talent, working on getting sponsorships, working on all of those things. So I attended the interest meeting in the spring. I don't know if I talked my best friend into doing it with me, or I told her I was doing, and she said, "Oh, I'll do it too." But somehow my best friend, Veronica, who ended up being my maid of honor, she came to the interest meeting with me. And then, that summer we got to work looking for sponsorships and putting together talents and all of that. And so then you compete. The actual competition is fall of your senior year. So usually a few weeks before homecoming, they have the pageant. That way they can do the coronation and all of that during homecoming weekend.
So everyone that's interested gets an opportunity to actually compete? Or is there like some kind of weed out thing?
I don't really remember. That couldn't have been the case, because there ended up being, maybe 11 to 15 of us that ended up competing. I do think there was a minimum amount of scholarship money you had to raise. So I think that weed some people out who have a difficult time raising the scholarship money. And then I don't remember what the other qualification, I know there's like a GPA qualification and all of that, but I don't know. It seems so long ago. I should have called my best friend Veronica because she remembers everything. And for me, I'm like, oh, the details were fuzzy. I was just
I remember that I won.
Yeah,
that I won.
Yeah.
And I wore the crown.
I remember being
and the
crowned. Yeah.
sash. Yes. And Veronica, poor Veronica's like, I remember everything because I didn't win.
Yeah. No, truthfully, she remembers everything. And I'm like, oh no, I don't remember that traumatic event, but I trust it happened.
So talk about the summer leading into your senior year. So you said you have to raise money and you have to, in your case, you have to, I guess, develop a talent.
Learn a talent, relearn a talent. Yeah.
So, yeah.
My headphones are dying. I'm going to take them out. If it messes up my sound, let me know and I can grab another set of headphones that I've got.
Okay.
Just let me know. Overnight, but can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I plugged them up overnight, but I guess they weren't charging. So here we go. So the summer, trying to remember if I was at Hampton that summer. So usually I took summer classes because I was getting a minor and a major, and so did my best friend Veronica. So typically we were sort of doing this whole summer school thing together. I shouldn't say I didn't ever have a talent. I played piano until I was like 10 years old. So from the age of 5 to 10, I played the piano. And then I just never touched a piano again. So that summer, where did I get a piano from? I think I went
One
home.
of the bougie ladies at Jack and Jill.
Yeah, well, my parents still had a piano. So I think I went home for several weeks, found an old piece I had played and just like label. I mean, I am not an expert piano player at all. I literally had to label each note with what letter it was, what key on the keyboard, and just practiced and practiced and practiced that one piece. I wasn't like, I'm not going to start piano theory all over again. I'm like, this is the piece I'm going to play. I'm going to learn this one piece. And that's what I did. So I spent hours practicing piano. Working out, that's important too, but mostly just practicing piano. And I think I was fortunate. The money raising part wasn't as difficult for me. I had been involved in a lot of organizations growing up, Jack and Jill. I coached a Special Olympics cheerleading team. I worked at a cheer gym. So I had all of these little communities from high school that were still willing to support me through this experience. So that part wasn't as challenging. It was really the piano learning, relearning, that was the most daunting task of all.
What did you play?
I think I ended up playing, gosh, my memory is just awful. I believe we played a Pirates of the Caribbean medley. I believe.
Okay, that's
Interesting.
pretty big. That's a medley.
Again, I can sort of read music, but it's just, and I the same thing when it came to competing at Miss America. I just learned one piece and I practiced that one piece ad nauseum for hours upon hours upon hours a day until I perfected it.
You hear that, kids? Practice makes perfect. Gotta practice. Gotta put in the time. This is a good opportunity just to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Be a queen or a king. Like, follow, subscribe to our channels on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at Queen of the Yard TV, on Facebook at Queen of the Yard, and on Black Twitter at _Queen of the Yard. Okay, we're back talking about playing that piano. So you played that piece and you wowed everyone with your virtuosity.
Sure. We'll put it that way. I'm sure I knocked the socks off the crowd.
So when was the
That's
competition?
amazing.
Yeah, so you come back your senior year. Walk us through up into the pageant. When is the pageant? And deeper.
So you come back fall of senior year, and I've been involved in a lot of pageants. I have never been involved in a pageant since that was as involved as the Miss Hampton University pageant competition. I mean, it is a production. So we've got weeks of practice to learn the opening number dance and the closing number dance and perfect everything. And this is where you stand on the stage and working on your walk. I mean, for weeks, I think we had practice at least 3 days, I think 4 nights a week. We had practice for like 3 hours. for, I want to say 6 weeks leading up to the competition. It was intense. It was intense. But the director wanted no nonsense. She was like, I'm not going to put together a bad production. And you know it. From going to an HBCU, like everything is a production. It could be a fashion show, and you're also going to practice 4 nights a week for 3 hours for 6 weeks. So everything is a production at HBCU. So that was the most involved pageant we had ever done. There was actually a lady who worked on campus who was a former Miss Bahamas who had competed at Miss Universe. So she came and she taught us all how to walk on stage and how to pose in swimsuit. And we had that practice week after week after week. Your wardrobe every piece of your wardrobe had to be approved by the pageant director. But the pageant was kind of led by students. So there's also this sort of like weird leadership dynamic where they're your peers, but they're telling you what to do. So there was like a little drama there because we're all girls. And when you get a group of girls together, there's drama. So it was an intense experience. There were people who dropped out just during that. You can imagine that, I mean, weeks worth of practice that, eats into your school and eats into your education, everything else that we're actually at Hampton to do. But those of us that push through, I think are all the better for it. I know I certainly am. It changed my life. But it was an intense experience. So when somebody approached me about doing a pageant after that, I was like, I don't think I have time for a pageant. But I had no idea that most pageants were not quite as involved as the Miss Hampton pageant.
You had already been put through the pageant boot camp.
Oh, more than a pageant boot camp. It was crazy.
What was the most intense part of it?
I think it's just the rigor of it, just the fact that it's for so many weeks and so many hours, and we're all full-time students. So it was just trying to balance the schedule of being a student, maintaining your grades, because if your grades drop below a certain GPA, you also can't compete in the pageant. So it was just the time management aspect of it that I think was a great lesson, because I do think it translated into like what you had to do as Miss Hampton, but more importantly has translated into the rest of my life, that I like to think I'm excellent at time management. And I think I have that to thank for it, because I would literally schedule my days in hour blocks. Like, this is the hour where I have this class, so I'm going to study from this hour, because I knew at nighttime I had to go to Miss Hampton practice. So I still had to figure out how to get everything done, while also pursuing this goal that I couldn't let my grandmother down.
Now, what was your major at Hampton? What were you studying? You said you're a double major.
So major with a minor. So I had a major in health and physical education and a minor in leadership studies.
Okay, so that's demanding.
Yeah, and I was also like taking extra prereqs because I thought I wanted to go to physical therapy school and didn't necessarily have all the prereqs within my major. So I took a lot of credit hours every semester.
And then you're preparing for a pageant.
And then preparing, exactly. So it's just a time management aspect. But again, a good lesson that I think has served me well, even beyond pageants.
So how many at the end, though, when is the pageant? So you come back, you're 6 weeks of preparing, and then you have the actual pageant. What we're talking about, October? No,
usually early October. So we get back to school like Labor Day weekend. So usually we practice throughout September into early October up until the night of the pageant. Depending upon when homecoming is, that's really what determines the date of or determined back then the date of the pageant. I think now they might crown the winner in the spring or something like that. But it was early October, we had the pageant, and then you have like 2 weeks to find your homecoming wardrobe. And I don't know why this was such a big stressor for me, but that was the most traumatic experience, was like looking for a homecoming wardrobe. So as Miss Hampton, you have to wear white homecoming weekend, but it's also like after Labor Day. So nobody's selling white, but you need a white suit, you need a white gown. And I feel like there was one in like, I think a white dress. Like there are 3 different white outfits that you needed. And I had the hardest time finding white outfits. This was before, you could just like go on Amazon and order clothes. Like, we were back in the Stone Age. So you had to like go to a physical store, ask if they have anything white, watch them laugh in your face. They tell you to drive to the next store. That's another 60 miles. So I remember driving all over Virginia looking for my white wardrobe for the Miss Hampton pageant or Miss Hampton homecoming weekend.
You would think stores would have taken advantage of that though. Like knowing that the Miss Hampton, you need white, like white people should have been ready for that. They dropped
I
the
mean, it's
bag
only
on it.
one consumer though. So
That's true.
everybody's
That's
gonna
true.
stock their store for one consumer. You don't know
Oh,
what
Lord.
size she's gonna be. Like, there's no way to sort of pre-plan that. Stores aren't worried about Hampton. Like Hampton is just
Good
a
point.
small blip
Yeah.
in the 757.
So let's talk about the pageant before we get into like what you had to do once you won. So how many days is the actual pageant? Is this, there's which I think is interesting. There's a swimsuit competition as well. So break us down, like, and how many contestants were there?
So I don't know if they still follow the Miss America protocol, but back then I was the first Miss Hampton in years that it wasn't a prelim to the Miss Virginia competition. So all the years prior leading up to my year as Miss Virginia, or my year as Miss Hampton, whoever won Miss Hampton actually went to Miss Virginia to compete at Miss Virginia. Therefore, they followed the structure of the Miss America pageant. So there was the 10-minute interview, panel interview with the judges. There's the swimsuit competition, talent competition, evening gown competition, and the onstage question. So those are the 5 rounds of competition. All of these things happen in the same day. So in the morning, you wake up super early, try to pull your hair and makeup together. I think we also did a hair and makeup lesson with a local makeup artist so we could figure out how to pull ourselves together. So you start the morning with that 10-minute interview, and then I feel like we took the day off of class. Like I just remember that whole day being about pageant. We went over to Ogden Hall, which is our big, kind of traditional performance hall at Hampton, and we're in the basement, just all nervous. We're doing a dress rehearsal. Like I just remember spending all day at Ogden with the other contestants, which was nice because we've all been through this sort of trauma of preparation together, but also nerve-wracking because we're this has been such a huge part of our lives for so many weeks, and now it's coming to a close and only one of us is actually going to win, and what happens from there. So the night of the competition, you start with your onstage we start with our opening number. The theme that year was Dream Girls. So we had they had a huge Dream Girls backdrop. We had these, bless their hearts, but they were awful costumes. They were what you would imagine if you Googled Dream Girl costume on Amazon, the cheapest, sparkliest Dream Girl costume you can find. That's what we wore on stage. That's what we did our opening number in with our dance number, introduced ourselves, and then the competition begins. So you start with, I believe swimsuit is first. So lifestyle and fitness and swimsuit. And at HBCU, everybody has, different body types. So that was actually kind of great and empowering to see so many women so confidently walking on stages before I think we had embraced that body positivity movement. Just confident in their bodies. So that was our first phase of competition. Then you move into talent, I believe was next. And all kinds of talents happen at a pageant. Yeah. If you may.
What were some of the talents that you remember from that stood out? Unique and not unique?
I won't talk about any specific girls from my year. There were some incredible singers my year, incredible singers. My first runner-up, still, she lives in LA now. She sings professionally. She's an incredible singer. I thought for sure I was going to lose to her. But there's always a few dance numbers, where you can tell that people aren't necessarily trained dancers, but they had to throw something together. I would say typically the mark, what people lean on when they don't have a talent in their back pocket is a dance number or a spoken word.
A poem.
A poem. Yeah. So
is
that's always the fallback.
The poem is
Maya
written by
Angelou.
Maya Angelou. Yes.
Maya Angelou.
Yes. Why the cage bird sing? Yeah.
Yes. I've heard Maya at every pageant that I've ever gone to where a person did not have I'm telling you.
But
everyone.
Yeah. And sometimes, I have seen some spoken words that were just wow, that was a performance, but more often than not, it's a poem recitation.
Why am I here on this stage doing Miss Hampton?
Yeah.
Why am
Yeah.
I a woman like Maya?
Yeah. It can be hard to watch. So yeah. In those moments, I was thankful for the hours I had spent at the piano because I was like, those people out there don't know that I don't know how to play this piano. All they know is I'm playing this piece and I look like I have a talent.
Right.
So
That's
what are you
right.
feeling at this moment? I mean, do you remember what you were feeling at this moment? First, when they do since it's similar to like Miss America and Miss USA, where you have the 10 finalists and then you have, it kind of gets narrower and narrower. What is going through your mind at this moment? And also, before I say that, the question, do you remember any of the questions, specifically the question on stage? Call Veronica. Call
I
Veronica.
know.
We gotta get Veronica
Let me
on
text
the
her. Yeah,
horn.
I mean, Veronica would remember. She remembers these things. And I'm like, I actually do think I black out a lot of times when I'm super nervous. I think still to this day, the Miss Hampton pageant was the most nervous I think I've ever been in a pageant. And I'll tell you why.
Wow.
Most pageants, the audience is a bunch of strangers. You don't know them.
Mhm.
They don't know you. You'll never see them again. And they'll never see you again. So it's like anything that happens on this stage, like while you're still nervous, it's not like gonna alter your life forever. And it felt like being on the Miss Hampton stage, like this could alter my life forever. If I flop on stage, now the whole student body like has something to talk about tomorrow, and I become that girl that flopped on stage. So there are just different stakes of the Miss Hampton pageant. Like you want to win Miss Hampton, but more importantly, like you don't want to make a fool out of yourself in front of the entire student body because even the people who aren't there are going to hear about it. So I just remember being like deathly afraid of everything and trying to like smile through it all. By the end, I remember my cheeks like quivering from trying to maintain a smile. Like this was before I knew I could emote other things other than just like the cheesiest grin. So I think the whole time I'm just like trying to smile ear to ear and that gets exhausting. My muscles were fatiguing. But that's what I remember the most is just like trying to calm myself down, trying to take a few deep breaths, trying to like not have my body shaking and my legs shaking, especially during piano. I had like a really bad habit of my hand shaking as I started to play the piano. So I just remember being deathly afraid, but
Oh
pressing
my
through,
God.
right? Because you have no choice at this point. Like we made it this far, you're gonna have to show up.
So you talked about um kind of the drama of dealing with like all the just ladies, it could be drama. Where's every we feel when we've talked to people, everyone has had some kind of tea, some kind of drama that happened during their year. What was your do we have to call Veronica to find out?
Girl,
What
we
was
had to
your
call Veronica.
let's take a quick break and get Veronica on the horn and find out what because we need the tea. And I feel like Veronica has it.
She probably does. She probably got the tea. Let me see if she's available.
All
That
right,
would
we're
be
gonna take a
great.
quick break and see if we can get Veronica on the horn,
Okay.
y'all, or at least get some tea. Be a queen or a king and like, follow, subscribe to all of our channels: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram at Queen of the Yard TV, on Facebook at Queen of the Yard, and on Black Twitter at _ Queen of the Yard. Okay, so we're back. We're still trying to get Veronica on the horn, but right now we're gonna talk to
Oh, she's calling
Desi.
me.
Oh, woo! Okay.
Oh, okay.
Well, we are.
Hey,
Tell her.
Miron. Yeah. I'm doing a podcast right now about campus queens, and they're asking me like details about the Miss Hampton competition, and you know my memory just doesn't work for real.
This is a great time to talk about besties and the importance of besties because they remember
Do
stuff.
you
and
remember
don't.
any tea or interesting stories? What questions y'all want to know? Or do you have time, like 5 minutes?
Tell her we just need some tea. We need to know what something interesting that happened that people would really be geared up to hear about.
Did you
And
hear
also
that?
the question.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So they're trying to shed light on like people don't know about the Campus Queen experience, but like the competition leading up to it is like a big deal when you're in it. And I just can't remember any details. Like
Says the
Do you
queen. I can't remember any of the details.
Do you remember any questions they asked? Any like anything that happened as we were preparing that was like a good story?
This is real time stuff, y'all. See, we trying to get somebody that, that was also there with the queen.
He was in the room where it happened.
Who was in the room where it happened. Who was
Veronica
still friends with the queen. Who's still friends with the queen.
They were best friends before and after.
Right. They remained best friends. This is hilarious. So funny. Oh, Veronica must be giving a very detailed story because
and then
that girl that tried to take your lipstick,
Y'all
and then
work
that
together.
other girl, and then that other girl.
Oh yeah, why did she quit?
Ooh, someone quit. Uh-oh. See, there's some tea.
There's tea to be spilt.
Yeah, I think
someone
so.
Or sipped.
Someone quit.
Oh, because y'all were both dating the same boy.
Oh, dating the same boy. Yes. Come through, Veronica. Come through, Veronica.
The boys will always do it. The boys will always do it.
Yeah, that's tea. I won't name any names.
Yes, that's tea. Yeah, we
don't
won't name any
names.
Oh, the God, that's hilarious. Veronica was dating the same boy as her competitor.
Sure.
That's funny. See, Desi didn't know anything about this because she was too busy trying.
She had her eyes on the prize. She's trying to get her piano. She was so focused on trying to get her piano.
Yeah, tell her that she was the. Thanks, Veronica.
Thanks, Veronica.
Okay, that's hilarious. So, okay. So
what you were taking notes.
Veronica,
it was more personal tea than anything, but I guess it's pageant tea too. So there was this girl in the pageant. She in the running for the pageant, who Veronica started dating her ex-boyfriend. And this girl was a pageant girl, like had been doing pageants her whole life, like had competed in the Miss Hampton pageant her junior year as well. Didn't win, so like was coming back to get what was hers essentially. But I guess halfway through the Miss Hampton like practice experience, for my friend started dating the guy that was this girl's ex, and she ended up dropping out of the pageant, and instead ended up being his escort in the Mr. Pirate pageant, which is like the male version of Miss Hampton, kind of. Now they call him Mr. Hampton. It's a whole thing, but back then it was Mr. Pirate. He was really just like Miss Hampton's escort. Yeah,
that's pretty a bad name, pirate. Like you're just stealing stuff. Anyway, but go ahead.
yeah. And they've changed it to Mr. Hampton now. But at the time, Dr. Harvey, I actually think it was Dr. May, the lady who was like in charge of the Miss Hampton pageant, would not allow Mr. Pirate to be called Mr. Hampton because she was like, that takes away from Miss Hampton. And also the Mr. Pirate pageant just didn't have the same like depth as the Miss Hampton pageant. So she was like, no, we're not doing that.
We're not doing that.
Okay, so she escort. Now, was your bestie still dating him while?
Mm-hmm.
When he's,
Yeah, that's why she did it. That's why she did it. She said, "I'm gonna drop out. You gonna date my ex-man?"
Did they break up after that?
Oh, girl, if I could tell you about this man she dated that I'd never liked and never thought was good enough. They continued to date after that for a long time. For a long time. This is not really pageant tea, it's personal tea, but
pageantry tea.
Yeah, but he needed an escort for the Mr. Pirate pageant. She had a gown. So
of course she had a gown. She dropped out of the pageant just to escort him. Child, that was thirsty move. That was
things you only do in college. You would never do that after.
Yeah, like next time, drop the dude, go for your own, ladies. Yes. Forget the dude, go for gold, go for your. Yeah,
absolutely. And then I forgot the biggest tea, I think, that year was that the year prior. I don't know if you all remember this. Hampton actually crowned a white Miss.
Yes.
Hampton.
Yes, I read that. Yeah.
Hawaiian. She would say Hawaiian. And actually, I love Nicole. Like, I have nothing bad to say about her. Like, I built a relationship with her post Miss Hampton, but it was a really big, like the Miss Hampton pageant my year was a really big deal because they were like, we got to get rid of this white queen, which I
Wow.
thought, you know, was ugly at the time. You know, Hampton's a HBCU, but that doesn't mean that others are not allowed. But the bigger, I think, controversy with her was that she wasn't a student at the main campus. She was a student at like the offshoot Virginia Beach campus. So nobody knew her on campus. I like to think that that's the reason people were most upset, not because she was white, but they did do a
Well,
sharp left. They're like, let's get a brown skin queen.
yeah. Well, that just added to it. They're like, oh, you didn't even get a main campus queen. You got, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
that just fueled the fire. That's all. But
Yeah.
hey, Nicole, you're cool.
Yeah, Nicole's cool. She was minding her own
Nicole.
business. She was going for her scholarship money and a ticket to Miss
Right.
Virginia, to be fair. So that may have been the other, I don't know if that's part of the reason as well that they pulled out of the Miss Virginia circuit, but she went to Miss Virginia.
So it's real quick. Is this scholarship money used for, where does the scholarship money go? Is this for, what is it for?
Specifically for scholarships. So the way that, I mean, Miss Hampton worked, the way Miss America worked, any scholarship money you got could only be used towards your education.
Okay.
So you had to apply it to your education. You could get it in the form, I'm trying to think if I got it in the form of a refund check, or maybe I may have used it for grad school because I also went to grad school at Hampton. But any of the money that you get, you have to use towards educational experiences.
So that the scholarship is is that the only prize other than the roses and the crown and whatever? Is that the only thing that you guys won?
I mean, you win the opportunity to be Miss Hampton for the year. I know the scholarship money is the biggest thing.
And how much was that?
Ooh, girl.
5,000.
Veronica.
Let me text Veronica.
Lord
it wasn't
have
a
mercy.
life-changing amount. It was in, it
Oh.
was probably 3,000 to 5,000, I would guess.
That's good.
Every bit helps.
Yeah, every bit
bit
helps.
helps.
I remember us complaining about it because we each had to, you know, raise a certain amount of money to compete in the pageant. We were like, where all that money go to?
Yeah.
So I remember that being a thing. It wasn't a life-changing amount of money. It was more for the experience. And I don't know if all campus queens do this, but as Miss Hampton, you also get to serve on sort of, it's like the Student Advisory Council. So you meet once a month with the president and all the administrators of the university to sort of bring the issues of students to the administration. You also get to attend like the board of trustee meetings. So you're meeting kind of the most distinguished people who visit the university each year. So I think those are probably, although they're not what you're striving for necessarily as a student in retrospect, I think those are the most impactful parts of the job is that you do get the opportunity to, you know, have one-on-one conversations with the university administrators in a way that most students never will, and are exposed to, you know, these successful people who serve on our board of trustees that otherwise, I mean, you don't even know that they're on campus. Like as a lay student, I didn't even know the board of trustee meeting was happening. And now it's like, come talk to the board of trustees about X, Y, Z. So it was a really, really big experience for growth in that regard, that it just opened my eyes to like what was happening behind the scenes of college. Because we're so focused on, you know, just the college experience, but there's a lot happening that we don't see or are not involved with as a typical student.
Well, we have not, that's new. We've not heard. I was Miss Dillard. That did not happen during my reign. We've talked to other queens and that is not, I mean, they've met mayors, they've gone, you know, been represented for organized, you know, events, but nothing to that detail where you are literally in the room speaking on behalf of the students and representing them, which I think is really great. They still do that? Is that still?
I assume so. I don't know. I'd have to ask. I'd have to reach out to somebody and ask. But I assume at least up until, I mean, there's a new president now at Hampton, so I don't know what the structure is now. He's been there for about a year and a half. But as far as I know, for years and years after that, yeah, you had a relationship with the faculty and the administrators.
That's amazing. So take us to that moment where you actually win, like you're crowned. Like take us through that whole thing. That's exciting.
Oh, it was exciting. It was exciting. I mean, and if I think back to every pageant experience, it's sort of this like out of body experience where I know it can't be lasting forever, but it feels like it lasts forever. Like you're standing there waiting for ages for them to say like fourth runner up, third runner up, second runner up. And then you're standing there with the first runner up and you're like, "Ugh, it would really suck to, be second place right now. I mean, it's better than not winning, but I just think I kind of instinctively burst into tears. It wasn't like I was sad or, I mean, I was happy, obviously, but it's the culmination of so much work, and especially for the Miss Hampton competition, like months and months of like my social calendar being taken over by Miss Hampton. And it was
Wow.
just sort of a validation, like, okay, that was all worth it. And that's all over. So I thought. Um, and just I think a sense of pride. Because again, my grandmother was in the audience. So she came to see me compete in the Miss Hampton competition. Of course, she wouldn't have missed it for the world. So I think also just like, I think the way I said it to her as a senior in high school was, if I come to Hampton, I will be Miss Hampton University. I didn't say I will compete. I said, I will be Miss Hampton University. And so I think just, now I'm getting emotional. I think just being able to experience that full circle. My grandmother has since passed. She's no longer with us, but just, I think that was a dream she had for me. So being able to like realize that dream for me, but also for her, I think still like remains really important to me. She got the opportunity to meet, Dr. Harvey, who was the president of Hampton, and that meant so much to her. She talked to him on the phone a few times, and she would tell all her friends at church that she had talked to the president of Hampton University, and he was also an Alabama boy. So I think it was just like a full circle moment where I felt fulfilled in a way that like, one, I deserved to be there, but two, I can say I'm going to do something and put my mind to it and put my efforts in that direction and can achieve it. And I think that has been like what has fueled me time and time again after that, was like, I did that time, I can do it, I can make it happen again. And that's kept me going in kind of all the things I've pursued since then.
What's grandma's name?
Grandma Willetta.
Oh, Grandma Roletta.
Yeah,
Yes.
Willetta
Oh,
Lovejoy.
oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. Oh, Willette
Like a perfect
Lovejoy.
Southern name. Yeah.
It's a perfect Southern name. Well, shout out to Grandma. We love that she was able to. I'm very close to my grandmother, and I feel what's going on inside of you right now. And the fact that she was able to witness and experience that, but just experience the journey with you, and then the kind of accoutrements that came after that. That is beautiful, and I love
Yeah.
that. You're
Yeah.
gonna have to send us a picture of Grandma so we can
Okay. Yeah.
you
I'll
know,
send you one.
yeah, we
She
gotta.
made it to Miss America, was the last competition she came to. And then she passed away peacefully in her sleep like 2.5 weeks later, which is
Oh.
kind of bizarre. Like, but I don't know. That's like she needed to see that final moment, and she went out peacefully.
Oh, well, much love to her. But
Yeah.
that's so beautiful. That's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I love that she was able to walk along those journeys with you and all the path.
Yeah,
She
it's
started this
beautiful.
pageantry.
She
She
started
pushed
it.
you
Yeah.
into
Yes.
it. She
If it
pushed you
weren't for
into it.
her, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I mean that wholeheartedly. Yeah.
I love
Changed the
that.
trajectory of my life.
So once you win Miss Hampton, how does life change immediately? And then I would say you've told us a little bit about how things have changed, but how does it change immediately? And then up until now, to where you are now, how does life change for you?
I think people will be surprised to know this now, but I mean, maybe not if you know me, but I was sort of like quiet. So nobody knew me on campus. Like when I won Miss Hampton, people were like, who is this girl and where did she come from? Because we have never seen her. Like I was not out. So it immediately changed my life in that way, that I had no choice but to be out. I had no choice but to be at every event that happened on campus. Um, so in that way, it changed me. And in that way, it forced me to come out of my shell. 'Cause Hampton has all of these, we have a Christmas tree lighting, we have a Founders Day, we have an opening convocation. Like there are all of these events that happen on campus, and Mrs. Hampton is expected to not just show up, but show up and give remarks. So very quickly, I was forced to come out of my shell. Like, girl, pull it together. You'll have to say remarks on the football field at homecoming, which is huge. So it really forced me to just like get comfortable with being uncomfortable and get comfortable with forcing myself outside of my comfort zone over and over and over again. Um, and I think, again, it taught me that even if it's something that I'm nervous about, or even if it's something that I wouldn't naturally do myself, if I prepare, I can do it, and I can do it well, and I can keep doing it. Um, and so I think that's the way it most immediately changed my life, was just forcing me to grow up in a sense, but I think just like find my voice and be comfortable with my voice.
That's amazing. Because you mentioned before, having been in I went to a predominantly white schools growing up as well. And so up until high school, and that's tricky for us. And so how did that experience, and it seems like you felt like a little, like you said, you kind of said you didn't feel beautiful or worthy enough to win a pageant. So how did that feel kind of coming out of that shell, and from not feeling beautiful enough to like, oh, okay, maybe I am good enough.
Oh, if I've said it once, I've said it a million times. Choosing to go to Hampton was the single best decision I've ever made in my entire life. Growing up predominantly white school, it's always like, you're pretty for a Black girl, or you're really well spoken for a Black girl, or you're smart for a Black girl. So there was always this like qualifier, like, am I pretty? Am I smart? Am I well spoken? Or are they just like comparing me to, whatever misconception they have about what Black is in their head? So I don't know that I ever, until college, felt like I was enough, felt like I was actually like doing all of the things to be successful. So I think, one, choosing Hampton put me in an environment where, okay, everybody was Black. So if I can not just stay aligned with them, but even rise above them, then okay, then maybe I am in my own right just well spoken. Maybe I am in my own right just attractive. Maybe I am in my own right just good enough. Um, and I hate to say that like winning Miss Hampton validated that in some way, but it does. And especially, I was so young and impressionable that like what other people thought of me was everything at that time. I mean, you just can't help it when you're in your early 20s, late teens, that like you care so much about the way the world views you. And I think in many ways that validated for me that like I am on the right path, and I am worthy of people viewing me as beautiful. And I think the biggest thing was like, I am worthy of having a voice, because I think
Mhm.
I had been voiceless, or had altered my voice to align with what I thought other people wanted me to be for so long, that it was the first time I was like, oh, I can just have my own voice, and that's okay. I don't have to morph and try to be wider than I am. Like, I can just be me.
Well, I think too, it's a beautiful full circle moment. A lot of full circles, I feel, just talking to you, Desiree. It's the stage gets bigger, and here you are competing with what, just call what America considers beauty,
Mhm.
predominantly white competitions with contestants. And here you are, a beautiful Black woman with a voice, competing against something that years ago would be like, nah, I don't think so. So I think just right then and there, that's just a testimony of just who you are, and just really what your belief system is, and also just exercising and your voice.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and that's what it takes. It's just doing it over and over again until a point where you're like, okay, this is me. You either gonna take me or you gonna leave me, and I'm okay either way. And it took me a long time to
Mhm.
get to that point.
Is there anything about attending those predominantly white, grade schools and stuff that you think prepared you for life in Hampton?
I do think that prepared me for life. While I think code switching sort of gets a bad name, I mean, I think code switching is necessary, and
Mhm.
and it just
Yeah, it's how
is.
we've
Like,
survived as a
yeah,
people.
exactly. It is how we, and I think, I used to get made fun of cousins and stuff for being too white, or like, why you talk so proper. I mean, I used to get made fun of by my own family for that. But it's like, some people could probably take a lesson in code switching, because that is the way in which you move forward in society, you can only go so high without being able to, the code switching is just relating to people on a level and in a language in which they understand. So yeah, I don't regret at all going to PWIs. I do think, I mean, I had a great education growing up. Like I grew up in a really great public school system. And that's why I chose part of the reason why I'm grateful I chose the HBCU experience, because now I'm getting both of those without it having to like hinder my professional advancement, for lack of a better way to put it.
What I think is funny is when the people who have Black people who attended predominantly white schools growing up, and then they choose like the HBCU, and all their other friends are talking about the schools they're going to. We're going to Harvard. Where are you going? Oh, I'm going to Hampton. Hampton? What's that?
Yeah, I mean, I still get it. People are like, oh, where's that? And I'm like, Hampton, or I'm like, Virginia. And they're like, where in Virginia? And I'm like, Hampton, Virginia. And that is where it is. Google it. But
so yeah. I want to take a quick break and then, come back. I know we have to go soon and talk about how this prepared you for Survivor and Challenger and all those important things that I need to talk about, because I watch both of those shows. Okay? We'll be back. Be a queen or a king. Like, follow, subscribe to our channels on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at Queen of the Yard TV, on Facebook at Queen of the Yard, and on Black Twitter at _Queen of the Yard. All right, so we are back with Dr. Desi Williams, our survivor, our challenger, our beauty queen, our Miss Hampton, our physical therapist, talking about how Miss Hampton prepared her for life after. So, big moment for you, confidence and all that other stuff. But then you participated in other pageants after that, right? So were you hesitant at all to get into other pageants after Miss Hampton?
Was I ever? Yes, I was very hesitant. So the Miss Bahamas who worked on campus, who kind of helped us with our walking preparation during the Miss Hampton pageant, nagged me for, I mean, probably a solid year. She was like, you should try another pageant. You should try another pageant. And I was like, girl, if it was anything like that last one, I don't have the time. And then eventually she convinced me. So I was in my first year of grad school at Hampton. She was like, you can wear all the same wardrobe. You can play the same piano piece. Like, you don't have to change a thing. Just like show up and compete, girl. So I remember it was either the day before or the morning of the pageant. I called my mom and I was like, hey, Mom, like, just wanted to let you know I'm competing in a pageant tonight. And she was like, you're doing what? I was like, I don't know. This lady on campus talked me into it. At the time, the entry fee was a $100 donation to Children's Miracle Network. So it was like a really low threshold to entry. So I scrounged up my little $100 and entered the pageant. And that night I won. And I remember the director coming backstage, and she's still a really dear friend of mine, also a Black woman. And she was like, honey, you don't have any family or friends here? And I was like, no, I didn't tell anybody I was competing because I didn't know how I would do. And she was like, can I help you take your things to the car? Like, it was a very sad picture looking back. She was probably like, this poor orphan child that has landed on my doorstep. But I became really close with her and her family, and they became like my second family in Virginia. Funny story, fast forward 10 years, they moved like down the street from my parents in Georgia. So they have relocated to Georgia. But at the time they lived in Virginia, my parents were in Georgia, and they like took me under their wing and took really good care of me. So that was my first Miss Virginia local. Went to Miss Virginia, kind of a deer in headlights, didn't really know what I was doing, but walked away first runner up. And I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty good. And then at the time, all the first runners up went to this pageant out in Illinois called the National Sweetheart Pageant. So it's essentially all of the first runners up from every state compete at this pageant. And I remember asking, I'll never forget, Miss Oregon in the back, all the girls were like doing their hair. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think. I was still using, you know how, well, y'all know because y'all Black. Those like rollers that you roll and then you just like fold them over.
Yes.
Yes.
I was still using that to curl my hair because I didn't own a curling iron, but I saw all the other girls doing their hair and I was like, oh, their hair looks so much more beautiful than me. So I remember going to Miss Oregon and being like, can you teach me how to use your curling iron? So she taught me how to curl my hair, let me use her curling iron to curl my hair for the pageant. My whole family came up. My grandmother was there as well. And I won that pageant. And then I was like, oh, dang.
Ooh. I should have let that girl use my curling iron.
I know she's probably still pissed, but I'm grateful. So I ordered that curling iron, and the next year I went back to Miss Virginia and won. And it was just that kind of snowball effect where it was like every time I got a little bit more confidence. I wasn't sure I knew what I was doing, but whatever I was doing was working, so I kept going. And then whatever I was doing was working, so I kept going. And that's sort of what snowball.
Playing the same piano piece, or
no,
are we in a different piano piece now?
After the Sweetheart pageant, one of the judges came up to me and he was like, "You're a really great competitor. Obviously you won, but he suggested that I change my piano piece." And there was another girl, I think she was Miss Maryland, and he was like, "You should ask Miss Maryland if you can steal her piece, because that's a really good piano piece." So I remember a few months after the pageant, I called her up and was like, "Hey, I know we're competing in different states, but I just thought I should ask you before I just start playing your piece. Like, do you mind?" And she didn't mind. So that became my piano piece the next year. And I worked the whole next year on perfecting that piano piece.
What was that piece? Do you remember?
Cubana is the name of it.
Okay.
It was like a Latin kind of piece that was fun. Like you could kind of, I took that piece all the way to Miss America.
So you took one girl's curling irons and another girl's piano piece. Okay.
It's a shopping cart method. You pick up what works for you and you leave what doesn't. Oh, I was very resourceful. I would borrow girls' dresses if they let me. Like, girl, we're not about to go broke over a pageant. So I would, that's why you make friends at pageants, right? So you can borrow their stuff.
What are those friendships like? The relationships like? What have you seen in all the different competitions with the other contestants? Because you are competitors. So is it catty? Is it sincerely nice?
At Miss America, to your face, everybody is kind. And the Miss America whole program, everybody leads with kindness. Now it's very much like the South, where like they might be kind to your face and then they're gonna talk about you behind your back, but to your face, everybody is just perfectly lovely. But it takes time to weed through who is actually kind at heart. But one of my bridesmaids I met at Miss America. She was Miss America as well, but she's still one of my closest friends. She comes to visit quite often. I see her every couple of months. So some of the friendships are really lasting and really, really deep, but you do have to read through it because there's a lot of fakeness happening, but that's how people think they need to be, right? Like Miss America's a girl next door, so I'm going to give people a girl next door even if I'm not her. So I don't fault people for that, but you do have to weed through a lot of it.
Okay. So, I got to talk about Survivor. So how does Miss Hampton prepare you for Survivor, and what made you go on that show? Beauty Queen on Survivor.
Yeah. Okay. This is kind of a really big pageant tie-in story. So actually one of the casting people for Survivor found me on the Miss USA website, and they reached out to me and said, "Hey, like, have you ever thought about the show Survivor?" And I was like, "Survivor's still on TV? Y'all still watch that?" But I watched a couple of episodes and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. But then he was like, "You should try watching season 28. So I turned on season 28 and there was a pageant girl on there. And not only was it a pageant girl, but it was a pageant girl I had competed with at the National Sweetheart pageant. So I was like, oh, she can do it. I guess I could do it. So I called her up and she was like, "It is as real as it seems on TV, but if I can do it, you can definitely do it." So from there, I made an audition tape. I remember I had my connections from Miss Hampton. So I pulled in the AV guy who worked in the library and all of these people to kind of help me put together this over-the-top production tape. I didn't need all that in retrospect, but I didn't know. I was like, this is
go big, go home,
honey. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm gonna give them a show. So I put on this big production, created this whole storyline for my audition tape. And then about a month later, they flew me out to LA to meet with the producers and they do an in-person interview. So again, a big pageant tie-in. I'm used to doing an interview with a bunch of people. And I remember before going in, there's a lady who wears this bright red lipstick and she's mean to everyone. Just be prepared.
Wearing bright red lipstick, but okay.
No, not anything about bright red lipstick. But I was like, she's not gonna be that mean. Like I've had meaner judges, I'm sure of it. And I remember walking out of the interview thinking like that was very easy and not intimidating at all. And I think it is all the pageant preparation that just does prepare you for any interview question that comes your way. So you're like, okay, I'll receive that and I'll throw something right back at you. So that was October. And then I think I got a call. Oh, I know. It was on because my car broke down. It was Valentine's Day. I had no Valentine. I remember it being like a very sad day. And I'm on the side of the road and I get a call and they're like, hey, we've selected you for this cast of Survivor. Like, are you available to come to Fiji? And I think it was like 3 weeks. And I was like, sure. like I'm having a really crappy day. This is great news. So that's kind of how that all took off.
What were the apprehensions about doing the show?
Have you seen Survivor, girl?
Yes, I have, honey.
Okay.
And I got questions and I hope you can answer them. I know you guys sign little contracts and everything, but I watched the show like, wait a minute. I could never go on Survivor for a couple of reasons. I have 2 specific reasons why I would never go on Survivor.
I mean, watching Survivor was like, for one, I have to sleep outside, like not interested. 2, there's no mirror. Like I'm a pageant girl. Like, what you mean? What do you mean I won't be able to see what I look like for a month? So I think
Keep
those
going.
are
Keep going. There's another one though.
That well, I didn't know at the time the bathroom situation. I didn't know the bathroom situation before I got to Survivor Island, and I was like, oh, that's how we do the bathroom. But at that point in time, you just have to like hold it together. And if everybody else is using the bathroom that way, like I guess I'm gonna have to do that too. But I didn't know about the bathroom.
Are you allowed to tell the people how y'all have to use the bathroom? I mean, I read about it, but
I think I'm enough years removed at this point from Survivor that I can probably say anything. So there are 2 different ways you can use the bathroom. Some people go out into the woods and dig a hole and use the bathroom, and then use a leaf and then cover up their hole. And then a lot of people will put like a stick where their hole is so that the next person doesn't accidentally dig in the same location. And then the other alternative is to go to the ocean. And usually you sort of, as a tribe, designated like a certain section of the ocean that is used for bathroom purposes only.
Water moves, water trap. Like, what if the tide like goes?
Girl, I wouldn't. You're gonna hate this, but that's also, I mean, we also bathe in the ocean. And if you're making rice and you don't want your rice to be totally flavorless, you might add a little ocean water to your rice to give it a little bit of salt situation.
You will survive the apocalypse. That's all I gotta say.
So they don't let you, but I read that you only get to take one personal item with you.
They don't even do a personal item anymore. That personal item thing must be a thing of the past. There was no personal item.
So you can't take toilet paper with you?
Girl, no. And I'm sure back when they allowed personal item, the toilet paper was not one of them because you'd use that to barter or whatever. No, there's no toilet paper.
So what were you able to bring?
Freaking out.
Well, that's kind of the beauty of the ocean situation. Like... I never went in I don't know how people went on land because that's just nasty, but some people are not. I mean, I guess some others would think that the ocean was nasty, but the ocean was like a pretty clean experience because, as you've already stated, the ocean moves.
Okay, note to anyone who goes to Fiji, make sure that you're at beach.
It's not just Fiji. It moves to different islands, honey. Like,
well, so now they're all in Fiji. They're all in Fiji now. They used to be different islands, right. But those other islands are pretty dirty. So I'm sure there's plenty of.
That's because they were pooping in the ocean and pooping on the ground. That's
So basically, you had one big bidet because that's how you.
One humongous bidet. And it's actually, once you get used to it, it's kind of nice.
Okay. Well, it looks like everyone stinks though. Like I don't know how, it seems like the body odor would be like a little rank after a certain amount of time.
We had to do an intervention with one guy on my first tribe because there were 3, what were we? Healers. we were the healers, but it was me and like 2 other blonde girls. We were the girls on the tribe, and we were like, we don't want to be nasty and smelly. So we literally got in the ocean every single day to like bathe our body, wash our clothes, hang them to dry. We did that every day. But there was one guy in our tribe who seemed to not think that that was necessary. So one day we just had to do it. We were like, who's going to say it? Somebody got to say it. So we did it. We did an intervention, and we were like, we will literally wash your clothes for you, but they must be washed. So some people you do have to force to clean.
Mm.
But I like to think I didn't ever smell. I don't know.
Desi, I hate to break it to your girlfriend. Y'all were washing up in doo-doo water.
It's a whole big ocean out there.
And doo-doo and pee-pee water, like somebody was thinking.
Yeah.
Desi was like, girl, I didn't stink, honey. Like,
I didn't smell.
Smelled like roses.
Smelled like
Smelled like
campfire.
roses.
But I'm also thinking of girl situations. Like there's some practical things here. Like people got the periods, and like, what are we doing? Like,
yeah. So there is a med box. So I mean, you can take like tampons or pads, but you're gonna probably want to use a tampon in this situation. And then some people wore like contacts. So there was a medical box that like or medicine where your medical essentials were.
Okay.
But it was only, I didn't have any essentials, so I didn't have nothing in the med box. I think I had eye drops. It's like, I don't know what to put in this med box. I don't. So yes, there is the option, and there's a little trash can there, so you can, dispose if you are using feminine products. But that's it. It's just a little, plastic crate box that you would put it in the backyard, and everybody has a little Ziploc bag full of their medical essentials. And then every day you get a multivitamin and an electrolyte packet.
Okay.
Just to make sure you don't.
And you go to the water, you go to the ocean and drink the pee-pee water when you drink.
No, you use regular water for that. Regular water.
So what was the hardest thing or most challenging thing about competing on Survivor for you?
I mean, if you've seen my season, I don't know how to backstab. It doesn't sit well with me. I've never been a good liar. My mom, she could tell over the phone if I was lying. Like, I've never been a good liar. So just like that whole lying aspect, the social aspect of the game is the hardest part to me, because I'm just not that person. I'm like, I want to tell you, like, why are we all lying to each other? Can't we all just tell the truth? That's kind of how I lead my life, and I have a really hard time switching that over for the game.
Yeah.
I find it very difficult. This is what I say, because I stopped watching Survivor for a while and I came back to it. And I find it very, very interesting that people don't know they're going to get blindsided, that people don't know they can get blindsided. Let me change it. Like, I'm like, didn't you just see somebody get blindsided yesterday with the same confidence of like, oh yeah, I know I'm rocking this. I'm like, as soon as you think you're rocking it, that's when you're getting blindsided.
It's true. It's true. But you're in such an altered state of reality. And unless you have played like one of these reality TV shows, I don't think anybody else will ever understand, because in our everyday lives, we have distractions, right? You've got your phone, you've got TV, you've got the internet, you've got somebody else, you've got somewhere to go. When you're in these situations, it's all you do. All you do all day long is spend time with these people, talk to these people, get to know these people, develop relationships with these people. So in the span of I spent 24 hours, 16 waking hours just talking to someone. And that's pretty rare in real life. Like, you could go on months worth of dates with somebody and not spend 16 concentrated, undisturbed, undistracted hours with a person. So you truly feel like you know these people deeper than you've ever known anyone in your entire life. So then it's like, how could they backstab me when we are best friends? We've only known each other for 3 days, but I'm telling you, we're best friends. And so it is a really altered perception of reality, because anybody else wouldn't understand until you're put in that like microcosm.
So what is surprising about Survivor that you can tell us that we wouldn't know, people who watch it or people who don't watch it, and you're like, oh, I wouldn't know that about the show?
I mean, I think usually the bathroom thing is the biggest thing. We also, because a lot of people are like, don't people get sick? And people do get sick, but you meet with the everybody individually meets with a physician before each challenge. So there is a
Okay.
level of like making sure that people are okay. But I think the thing
That
that
nobody's
impressed,
gonna die
yeah, nobody's
in
going to, not
Fiji.
in modern day Survivor. I don't know about old Survivor, but I think they figured it out now how to keep people alive. So you meet with a doctor privately so you can tell them about things going on that maybe you wouldn't share with your tribe mates. But what impressed me the most was just Jeff's involvement in the game and his passion for the game. So like Jeff is very much ad-libbing everything. Like Jeff doesn't have a script. Jeff isn't reading off a teleprompter. Like he knows us through and through. And I remember before going into the game, he meets with us each individually, just like a 10-minute chat. And I remember him asking about my family and asking about my sister. And I remember thinking, like, how do you know these things about me? Like, it was almost kind of freaky, but he's so invested in the game and in its players that he studies up on each and every one of us because he wants to know, like, what makes you tick, what you're bringing to this game, what outside factors he might be able to ask about in tribal council. Like, Jeff knows so much about what's going on. And that, to me, was really eye-opening.
Yeah. Did it drive you crazy when you were doing a challenge and he's like, okay, so Desi, what does it feel right now? Are you like, I'm like, Jeff, shut up. People trying to concentrate and you're up there talking in their ears. Like,
yeah. I remember one
girl.
challenge in particular. We had like a huge stack of rice or something and we were wet and we were walking across a tiny balance beam. And a lot of people were struggling on it. I remember just like walking across it like it was nothing. And I remember him yelling out, Desi, walking across the balance beam like it's nothing. And I was like, Jeff, shut up. You're blowing up my spot. Like, people don't even see me right now. I want to go fly under the radar. And now you've drawn everybody's attention to the fact that I might be good in challenges. So yeah, it's very annoying. Like, mind your business, Jeff. Mind your business.
He is really good at, I'm a sports person and I watch him and he is the way he plays all of the challenges. It's like, all right, like he's really good at that. And I watch him, I'm like, wow, that's really, really good that he can do it. And he doesn't miss a beat.
No,
he doesn't miss a beat.
It's all ad-libbed. It's all ad-libbed.
Wow.
Like, that's impressive.
It's very impressive.
So what number were you in terms of getting evicted from Fiji?
I was the first member of the jury. So I think I was like 11 or 12 to be voted out. So the second post-merge boot.
Okay, and so now that you're on the jury, how do you feel about these people? Because some people are like, I see them over there scowling, and then some people are like trying to be happy about it. But what was your feeling?
So to be fair, ours came down to a tie, and I knew I could turn on. I knew before going to the vote, like it was me or this other guy. The only reason I wasn't the first boot was because I won the individual immunity challenge. But I knew I was like, once I won that, they were like, oh, this girl got to go because she can win an individual immunity challenge. So I knew I could have stayed if I would have turned on and voted like the one person I still trusted in the game. But my thought process, I don't know. That was, again, it was hard for me to backstab. So one, I don't want to backstab. Two, I stay in one more vote, but then they're still coming for me the next vote. And now I know they're all coming for me. So I probably didn't have as hard of feelings as most people were because while it may have come off like a blindside, it wasn't truly a blindside. Like I did see it coming. I just wasn't ready to change my character for the game. In retrospect, maybe I should have, because girl, I could have been a millionaire, but at the time, I was like, I need to be able to watch this back with my kids in 20 years and be like,
yeah, mom did the honorable thing.
Yeah, you have to trust who you trust. And they're also
love an honest
Survivor. What'd you say?
I said we love an honest queen.
And there's also a lot of people who come out of the game of Survivor really screwed up in the head. Like for years afterwards, they have a hard time trusting people because they don't know who they can trust and who they can't trust. Because again, you've developed these super tight relationships with people who then are lying to you behind your back that whole time. And I was like, I certainly am not going to be in therapy for the next 5 years over this game. So I got to trust who I trust and keep it moving. Like y'all not going to have me in therapy forever just over a game.
Now there's something that I never knew. I mean, I just saw an episode recently and the girl was blindsided. I mean, I just started back watching it again like 2 years ago. She was visibly destroyed, like tears. She was like in shock. And so she looked at them. She was like, I cannot believe you guys. And so they tried to she goes, no. And she just watched, she was pissed. And so even when I saw her later, because she's part of the jury, she's just sitting there like, I don't like any of y'all.
I
And
believe
I
it.
thought, wow, she's really hurt. She's
And
really
that's not
hurt.
an uncommon experience, to the point that there is actually a psychologist at Ponderosa when you get there, so you can have someone to talk to. They give you access to a psychiatrist. I think it's for like a year afterwards. If you need to like check in, talk through things, if you need ongoing talk therapy. I think all reality, I mean, the challenge also provides the access to one. Yeah, I mean, because it can kind of alter your whole perception of what you thought was reality, because that was your reality for so long. And then you're like, oh, that person who I loved didn't care about me.
Who I love that I just met like
Who I love that I
days
just
ago.
met. Yeah.
My best friend stabbed me in the back.
Oh,
Oh no, the line
Yeah.
is always, well, I got to get her before she gets me. And I'm like, yeah, that's a messed up
Yeah.
way to think. So what makes you go from the challenge? So you go from Survivor and then you go to the challenge? Like you weren't sick of reality shows yet?
So by the time the challenge opportunity came around, I was 5 years removed from Survivor. So honestly, I was like, I don't know what barrel they pulled me out of. Like, I thought my reality television career was over. And then I got a call for the challenge. And it's one of those things, I'm a very like, I don't want to have regrets type of person. So there's not a whole lot I will say no to if it seems like a rare opportunity. So the
We're
opportunity
grateful.
Yeah, the opportunity came. I was on the fence, honestly. It was my boyfriend, my now husband. I guess, were we engaged at the time? No, we were just dating at the time. And he had been a fan of the challenge in high school. And he was like, the challenge called? Like, what do you mean you're thinking about it? Like, you obviously have to do this. So that was kind of like the extra push I needed. And I was like, I guess I'm doing this. But I was more terrified, I think, for the challenge than I was for Survivor.
really? Why?
It looks hard.
Yeah, some of those challenges, it's like, are y'all trying to kill people, or like, what is the objective here? Is the objective death? It's just, yeah, the challenges are just so much scarier, so much more high risk. And I like
I
it.
mean, guys, they're doing stuff like they're doing stuff like you have to plant something on a moving truck, and you have to like they're doing like really high octane, high risk challenges on the challenge. It is absolutely insane.
Our
Yeah.
very first challenge was rappelling down the side of a 22-story building. That was challenge one. Another challenge was, yeah, you're on moving trucks and you're like suspended in a harness and you're going from side to side, like just swinging across, the road. Yeah, another challenge was a free fall, that same 22-story building. Like, it's just terrifying things.
I can only imagine what the disclaimer, like the contract that you have to sign for that. And did you play sports at all growing up, or?
I cheered competitively and ran
Okay.
track a little bit.
Okay, so you got speed, agility, and you got something.
But not combat sports. And they also like combat on the challenge. So it's just like a whole different beast where I was like, I could get hurt. I could definitely get hurt. I never
What does your
felt like I
mom
could get
think?
hurt on Survivor.
Yeah, I mean, my only thing is all that water stuff that y'all do on the Survivor. I'm like, I know someone who was on Survivor who learned how to swim just to do Survivor.
That's crazy.
And yeah, Sabrina, she learned how to swim. But wow, so you won season 2 though.
I did.
Wow, that's crazy town.
It is
That
crazy.
is,
It's still crazy to me in the best way. But yeah.
that is bananas. How did winning Survivor, I mean, the challenge compare to winning your pageants, like your first Miss Hampton? Like what was the difference?
I mean, both very emotional experiences, and maybe I'm just a crybaby, but they were both these like experiences where I didn't necessarily want to cry, but I couldn't not cry. And actually winning the challenge, I was so dehydrated that I tried to cry, and like literally no tears came out because I had nothing left in me. So just like a very different physical experience, where one is like, I'm the most beautiful I've ever been, and the other one's like, if I had to go another hour, like I would have been dead on the side of this mountain. So very, very different experience, but similar, like emotional, internal kind of responses. Like they're both very visceral responses.
Okay. So tell us real quick, what was the last challenge that you had that made you win?
So
What was the last thing?
The final thing is always like, they call it a final. So it's usually like a day long or 2-day long competition. So ours was a 2-day long competition. The first day was like, they called it different trials, I think. So one was like pulling this really heavy box up a mountain, or like several really heavy boxes up a mountain. One was a puzzle, one was a spelling challenge. I won that. So historically, like the people who play the challenge are not the smartest people. So I pretty easily won the spelling portion. And then the last was like an eating competition where you had to eat a bunch of nasty foods. So that was day one. And then that night, very Survivor style, we had to, well, I guess more luxurious than Survivor. We had to sleep in a tent. We ate like canned food and crackers and had this like overnight challenge that didn't even get shown. And then the next day was kind of a 10, I think it was a 10-mile like uphill run with a bunch of different sort of challenges in between. So there was an axe throwing portion. There were several miles where we had to carry this like 30-pound rock on our shoulders, like up this super steep hill. There was another kind of like logic challenge where you were trying to balance something. And one was a memory challenge, and then just like uphill trekking. It was just trekking upon trekking upon trekking, having not gotten any sleep the night before, having not eaten properly the night before. So I was pretty depleted by the end of that. But it's just a whole day, 2 days of just physical labor.
What year was that?
Last year, 2023.
Yeah, I know, because I watched it.
Yeah,
I just
like
wanted to.
when was that? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you guys. I love they had the black, kind of the Black Girl Alliance a little bit. You guys had a colored girl alliance on there.
We did, but it happened organically.
It happened organically. Yes, it was.
Exclude anybody, but people were acting funny. Like once you lie, like you got to go. So that was, I really appreciated that season of the challenge because I was able to kind of I appreciate the challenge, I guess, more than Survivor, because you don't necessarily have to lie to win. Like it's not so ingrained in the performance of the game that like you're almost like applauded in Survivor for being a really great backstabber.
Yeah.
Whereas the challenge doesn't have that same environment.
They still do a little bit of that sneaky stuff though, but not as much as, I mean, I did.
Yeah, but people get upset when you're sneaky, as opposed to like, oh, good on you. That was a really great way to lie to someone. Like that's how I feel like it's seen in Survivor, is like, wow, she was such a great liar in this game, and that's why I voted for her to win. Like that's kind of crazy, but it's the way the game is played.
So putting these two experiences together, one of my last questions, I'll say, what has competing on reality shows, how did that add to your life lessons?
Oof. I mean, so many things. Again, reality shows I think it teaches you to be present. So whenever I get back from a reality show, because I've been so accustomed to not having my phone with me, it's really hard for me to get back into this kind of nature where you're always on your phone or always texting or responding to texts right away, because you're so used to just being present with people and your phone being like not even a thought. So, and in that experience, you also see how much closer you can get to people when you're not distracted, when you're not constantly distracted in your interactions with people. So I think in many ways it's taught me to be more present, even when I'm at home, to like put my phone away during a whole dinner, like not on the phone upside down, because that's not truly present, but like leave it in my purse where I'm not even accessing it. Sometimes I leave it at home if I'm going on a date with my husband. Like there's nothing that's going to happen in the next 2 hours that I need to attend to that's more important than our relationship. So I think that's kind of the biggest life lesson I learned.
So you guys are gone. So like you said, you can't have your telephone. You don't have television. You don't have your phones. So my biggest concern about doing any of those shows is not being able to contact my family. Like I'm super close to my mom and my grandma. So how did that feel, not being able to contact your family those times that you feel like, I don't know what's going on? How does that feel? to not know
I
what's
think
happening in the world?
I think at first you're very anxious about it, and then you get to a point where you're like, oh, this is kind of nice to not have to carry everyone else's burdens. And on Survivor, if something super emergent were to happen, like somebody passed away, they would let you know. But like normal everyday stuff, like whatever. On the challenge, you actually do get to call home. You get 10 minutes, sometimes every week, sometimes every other week, to call home. But it's like a pre-approved list of people. You can't really talk about current events. It's essentially like, how are you doing? And you can be like, good, but you can't give them any detail about what's happening in the game. So they're very surface level conversations, almost to the point where it's like, this kind of feels like a waste of time because we're in each other's
Well, they can
faces.
hear your voice though and know that you're okay.
I can hear the
and that you're
tone. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Because there's a lot in your inflection.
Yes. Yeah. I guess that's true. But it's more, I would say those calls feel more for the other people than us, because I can't decompress what's happening in the game with these people. Like I can't tell them anything about what's happening in the game. So I just am there. But it can be helpful on I remember season 1, I had a really, really, really rough day in the game and was like crying all night. And then I couldn't get, my husband's a physician. So he had gotten called in. He couldn't like answer the phone when I was trying to call. And I remember like bawling myself to sleep that night. So there are moments where it is nice to just like feel like somebody is on your side when you feel like the world's against you. And often in these games, like there are moments where you feel like the world is against you. You don't know who you can trust.
Yeah. Well,
so which one would you do again? A beauty show or a reality show? If you had to, they're like, hey, Desi, we got door 1 or door 2?
Reality show for sure. Pageants are so far behind me. I mean, I have girls ask me if I'll like help them prep, and I'm like, I'm happy to help you, but I feel it's such a specific skill to do well in a pageant. And I feel like I'm too far removed. I'd have to relearn the whole culture of pageants.
So I guess this is kind of brings us to a final question. And thank you so much, Desiree, for your time and getting up early. But, as these young ladies come to you, and let's talk specifically about HBCUs, what is your hope and future? I mean, you kind of said this really prepared you. This did a lot for you, but this time, this moment, being in the present, but also looking in the future, what is your hope for
HBCU
campus queens? Yeah.
I usually try to approach the conversation with young ladies who are interested in competing as kind of reminding them that they should come up with a personal goal for the pageant. And I've told people this all the time, and it was always something that I had ingrained in the back of my head, was like, if at the end of the day, the odds are you're not going to win, right? More people are going to lose and are going to win this pageant. So in order for you to still feel fulfilled and feel like you've walked away with something more, like you need to create a personal goal for this pageant. So maybe the personal goal is to be, so for example, for me, I feel like when I showed up at Miss America, I had sort of been coached to say certain things. And so I showed up as a person who was a coached version of me. So when I went to Miss USA, I said to myself, I don't care how I do at this pageant, but I want to walk away from this pageant knowing that I showed up as unapologetically me. And that was my goal for the Miss USA pageant. And obviously I didn't win, but I wore the dress I wanted to wear. I wore my hair the way, even though it caused a bunch of issues with my director, I wore my hair the way I wanted to wear. I wore what I wanted to wear in an interview, even though it's not what my director wanted me to wear. Like there were all these things that I was just like, I'm going to do it my way. And so I walked away from that pageant feeling so much more fulfilled than I did for Miss America, because I had something else that was my North Star. So North Star cannot be winning the pageant. The North Star has to be something different. And you have to determine what that is for you and what success is going to look like for you in that pageant outside of winning.
So how did you wear your hair and what did you wear?
I wore this red gown. I'm still obsessed with this gown. So I had a sponsor. My sponsor was Sherry Hill, which is like a renowned pageant dress designer. But they wanted to put me in this like white angelic flowing dress, and I was like, that's not me. Like I want to be fierce. Like I want to, be sexy. It's Miss USA. And so I found my own separate sponsor, And I went to that sponsor and they made me a custom red gown that was just like very straight, only a little bit of beading, like in the right places. And I wore my hair kind of like straight, just straightened down. And I loved it. I loved that dress. I wish I had somewhere to wear that dress again. I think it's the only pageant dress I still own, because I'm like, one day I'll be able to fit in it again. I'll never be able to fit in it again. But it was my favorite because it was exactly what I wanted. It was custom and it was red, and I'd never worn a red pageant dress on stage before. So
Red is fierce.
yeah.
And
Well, I have one last question,
Oh.
and then Stacey has one last question. My one last question is, why do you think HBCU campus queens remain to be or should be important still for the culture?
Oof. I mean, I guess I am skewed because I had such a great experience and it truly changed my life. But I think that could be true of several campus queens, right? Like it's an opportunity for you to take on a leadership role. It's an opportunity for you to move outside of your shell. It's an opportunity for girls who would not be able to compete in a traditional pageant setting or compete in a, traditional setting to become a queen, have the opportunity and feel accepted. So I think that's important, right? It still kind of circles back to representation, and we as Black women, especially young Black women who are still seeing the standard of beauty being either very thin or very cosmetically and surgically morphed, like to just know that you can enter a space and just be unapologetically you and be rewarded for it. I think is something that the young Black women and girls still need. Like you just still need to be surrounded by other women who are regular normal women, but still considered beautiful, still considered successful, and still considered their voice is still considered important.
And where can our viewers and listeners find you? Like where platforms, and also what's next? What are you looking forward to in the new year?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm always doing a million things. I'd say the best place that I'm most active is Instagram. So my Instagram is just at Desi J Williams. I will not be changing that because I'm married, so it's gonna stay Desi J Williams. I have a YouTube channel, but I only sometimes post on it. Same thing with TikTok. So I think I'm also Desi J Williams on YouTube, but Instagram would be the primary way to find me. And in the new year, I'm looking forward to continuing to expand as an entrepreneur. So I own a full-time company that I've grown from its infancy, and we're like finally becoming successful. So that's been very exciting to see over specifically this year. So I'm just looking forward to continuing to grow in that regard, and just open to whatever knocks on my door. I do some TV hosting. You can find me on Amazon Freebie. I host the HBCU version of a show called the College Tour, sorry. So you can find that on Amazon if you are interested in any HBCUs. We've only done a few HBCU episodes, but it is a great way for upcoming college students to sort of get a feel for different universities that are available.
That's great.
That's right. And if those knees and those backs are aching, you can find her at A+ Care
right
in Los Angeles to get those limbs together.
Especially if you're about to or coming off of a reality show called Survivor.
Right.
Well, tell your business partner, thank you so much for passing along thank you so much for passing along our message to Dr. Desi. We really appreciate it, and we really enjoyed this conversation. You have been a joy to speak with. So we will see y'all later. It's been a Queen of the Yard. Bye.
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 Be a queen or a king. Like, follow, subscribe to our channels on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at Queen of the Yard TV, on Facebook at Queen of the Yard, and on Black Twitter at _Queen of the Yard. Be a hero. Support our crowdfunding campaign to make Queen of the Yard a hit TV series at crowdfunder.com/Queen of the Yard.